Okay, thanks. Let's go to give you some details about the project, just a short details. The project has a clear objective, is that to produce a set of methodological tools that on one hand help the public sector in this modernization process, but on the other hand, aims at boosting the transformation of the public sector into an innovation leader for other organizations. In order to achieve this goal, we follow three phases. In the first phase, we analyze the current societal and public sector needs. The next step was to assess the latest technologies that are currently in the market, and finally, we map these needs with the technologies in order to produce some research recommendations and roadmaps so that these needs can be addressed by these technological tools. This is, hello? Can you hear me?
Vai man pajautāt Eduardam? Jo, es reāli saprotu, ka, es vai viņam vai tev, ja? Viņš ka jāpajautā.
Please, I'm going to mute all of you because there is some noise. Okay, just let me
Vienkārši es pa laikam
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, perfect. This is only in a very, very short way. To go through these phases, we use different methods like the research, interviews, focus groups, online consultation, offline validation activities, and workshops. In all these activities, we involve our targeted stakeholders that include people from public sector, civil servants, technologies, experts in IT area, etc. On the top of this action, we also promoted a solid network with aims at contributing in these results with the expertise. In this way, we had two groups of people, the experts committee that is composed by 4 experts that work with us during the whole project. And we also had the Experts Advisory Board, that this is a group of more people, more stakeholders that have been involved in the different phases in different ways. Our goal is to provide you with these results and with the expertise that they contribute in the project in order to sustain the future activities of SONNETS. Okay, we will ask you that if you have any question, it will be better if we can postpone them, delay them until we all have presented all our slots, and in this way will we have more time to discuss it in a better way. Let me introduce the agenda. First of all, after the welcome that I have already done, my colleague Enrico Ferro is going to introduce you the major societal challenges and the needs of the public sector. Next, Sotiris Koussouris will introduce the innovation identification framework through the slot identifying emerging ICTs and their innovation potential for the public sector. And he also will give you a practical scenario so that you can easily understand how this methodological framework can be applied to your daily task. Sonja Grigoleit will present the research directions and the roadmap. And finally, Esther Garrido will explain you how you can use these results, how you can contact us, what is the sustainability approach of the project. And as I said before, we will conclude with your questions and answers. Hope you enjoyed this webinar and have a very fruitful morning with you. Thanks a lot. And now I give the floor to Enrico. Enrico, please.
Yeah, hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Enrico Ferro. I'm the head of the Innovation Development Department at ISMB, there is a private no-profit research center focusing on ICT. What I'm going to present this morning, very briefly, is the work we conducted in the work package 2 of SONNETS, and specifically on the work we did on needs identification for the public sector. This is the outline of the presentation, so I'm going to briefly describe the role of the work on needs we conducted within the framework of the overall project. I will give you a brief overview of the methodology that we adopted for conducting this type of work. And finally, I will present the results we obtained in terms of needs, barriers, and success factors that needs to be taken into account when trying to address societal issues through public sector innovation, as well as number of innovation directions that have been identified that may help guide the process of public sector innovations in the future years. So the aim of the call under which the SONNETS was financed was to try to align the process of public sector innovation with pressing societal needs. So the work that we conducted in terms of trying to single out and identify and let emerge the needs that are pressing in society at the present time was, if you wish, the first step in the process of value creation, allowing to set the stage for a problem solution fit assessment that was aimed at trying to understand if and how emerging technologies could help in addressing and solving the problems that today's society is facing. When I talk about society, of course, I mean both private citizens that we call individuals, businesses, and of course, public sector agencies, meaning civil servants. So this is a brief overview of the methodology that we adopted in trying to identify the needs that needed to be kept into account. As you may see, it's a 4 phases approach that involved both secondary and primary sources and overall involved over 200 stakeholders in the validation activities and also in identification of the first long list of needs. So basically, it was some sort of a filtering mechanism that started from the identification of a long list of pressing needs that were 53 needs, and by adopting face-to-face interviews with privileged informants, and then subsequently through local workshops and online consultation, we managed to filter them down to 12 needs. This is an overview of the final list of needs divided by stakeholder. In the column on the right-hand side, you also can see in which countries these needs emerge as being more of a priority based on our online consultation. The needs, of course, are the result and testify the presence of a number of macro trends. For example, if we look at the citizen expressed by individuals, we can see that they are the consequence of shrinking public budget that has started to impact on the provision of important services such as health-related services, the changes that are occurring in the job market, and at the same time, an increasing higher expectations that people are placing on the public sector in terms of service quality. If we move on to the businesses, we can see that there is a need to stimulate and revive a little bit the business ecosystem by sustaining innovation, and in particular the growth of young and new and innovative businesses, and also at the same time to reduce the complexity that sometimes the legal systems and the public sector is imposing on business actors. Finally, if we move on to the public sector, of course, there is a strong need to optimize the resources, the scarce resources available for providing the services that the public sector is in charge of providing, and also the need to use technology to promote innovation and an improvement in internal services in order to break the trade-off between a reduction of resources available and quality of services delivered. Moving on to the barriers that emerge from our activities, we managed to identify a number of barriers that pertain to different aspects. Some of them are financial, some of them are legal, some have to do with organizational aspects, with political aspects, and some others have to do with human capital. These barriers, of course, as well. Nuria, I think you're typing, or maybe you may want to mute your microphone.
No, it's not me, Pat.
Ah, it's not you. Okay, so I can hear somebody typing in the background. But anyway, sorry. So again, also the barriers, of course, are, if you wish, a consequence of a number of macro trends. The first one being lack of adequate financial resources. The second one has to do with aging workforce and the impact that this has on productivity and the skills obsolescence within the public sector. The third trend has to do with the increasing complexities of legal frameworks that are making it very hard for both the public sector to adopt lean and streamlined processes, as well as they are placing on businesses a significant burden in terms of administrative fulfillment. Moving to success factors, here as well, we identified 4 categories of success factors that emerge as important in trying to implement innovation within the public sector with a high impact. And these factors range from the eradication of corruption to the adoption of a triple sustainability approach to leveraging lifelong education and training. What is interesting about the success factors is that none of them really includes a short-term action. All of them entail a structural and long-term commitment. So I think one of the main takeaways that we can suggest and we can the work that we conducted in terms of success factors is that what is important for the implementation of an impactful innovation in the public sector is really to persist and be resolute in the application of an innovation-friendly approach. So activities and actions that have a very short-term time horizon and that do not stratify over time their impact very rarely manage to generate a significant amount of impact. While if we have structural and long-term commitment, this is perceived as being a much better approach for the generation of impact. Finally, what we managed to do, we managed to single out 2 perspectives about public sector innovation. And these 2 perspectives basically represent the views of actors from outside the public sector, meaning private citizens and businesses, and actors from inside the public sector. So this in order to identify this approach that should be maintained over time in order to generate significant results. So if we look at the process of public innovation from outside the public sector, we can see that there are 3 dimensions along which actors would like to see the process of public sector innovation to unfold. One is about simplicity of rules. We were talking about the legal framework, interfaces, meaning interaction with public agencies, and processes. One is accountability, about certain response times and about the scarce resource available for delivering the services. And the third dimension is it's about inclusiveness, meaning guaranteeing basic needs and participation in the political processes. While if we look at the public sector, the process of public sector innovation from within the public sector, by talking to civil servants, they expressed their if you wish, their preference to see the public sector innovation process to unfold along three dimensions. One is about meritocracy of incentives and for the promotion of innovation that we all know entails risk. So if there is not the right incentive system put in place within public agencies, it's very difficult to promote innovation and get innovation to spread across organizations. It's about agility of bureaucracies and skills and fresh energies, and this especially is linked with the aging of workforces. And finally, it's about an integrated and a coordinated approach in the relationship with the private sector that more and more is entering in the process of providing services of public interest. So these are the two main stances on innovation that help us define a number of dimensions along which it could be wise to adopt an innovation promotion approach within the public sector. So this was my last slide. So I hand it over back to you, Nuria, for the next presentation.
Okay, thank you, Enrico.
I'm gonna talk about the SONNETS Innovation Identification Framework. So I believe you can see my screen and you can see the different slides moving.
Yes.
So the SONNETS Identification Framework is one of the outputs of the SONNETS project, and actually tries to combine the needs identification that Enrico has very well described in the previous session with recommendations for the implementation of adoption of actions, which will be described by Sonja in the next session. So the idea is to define a framework that is easy to use. It involves, of course, experts, but it is, let's say, designed to be also utilized by public sector employees to identify trends and technologies and innovation actions that could be used by the public sector, either for modernizing their own organization, so we're talking about bringing innovation in the public sector, or for transforming the public sector in an innovation breeder, so utilizing such technologies and adopting such technologies that will allow others to build on outputs and on offerings of the public sector. So the framework is a document which is long, but has also some very, let's say, illustrative pages in the beginning to get a quick understanding of it, which you can download from the website of SONNETS. And actually, it's a 7-step methodology, which starts with the identification of the needs, then identifies technologies and selects technologies that correspond to those needs and that could provide a solution, performs an assessment of those technologies in the context of the organization that is investigating whether it should adopt those technologies, and then actually helps the organization to validate all the assumptions made through scenario building techniques and through open validation procedures. So I'm not going to talk theoretically about the framework. What we're going to do today is just to provide a practical scenario of how this framework could be used in a public body, like a public administration or like a ministry. So in our scenario, we have a lady that is called Maria Timbers. So it's a fictional character, and she's working in the Ministry of Health in a country, and she's senior executive and policy consultant, and her job is to try and reform the policy domain of public health, having in mind that there are persisting problems by citizens pointed out regarding the quality of the healthcare services, and also that there is the current economic and refugee crisis that also provides obstacles into the realization of advanced healthcare services, or even to the offering of mainstream services to certain populations. So Maria has recently gone through the SONNETS Innovation Identification Framework, and she has started gathering results from different sources in order to identify, first of all, the needs that are present in her domain. So after getting insights from Commission for Passenger Rights, or from the NHS, or from other stakeholders or organizations, but also from the public itself, she concluded in a set of needs, which we can see in these slides, that regard either citizens, so could be the well-being, inclusive well-being and health, and the faster and transparent access to public services. So actually needs that are grouped under those two groups, and other needs that are grouped under public sector needs, like the increase in resource productivity, or like the improvement of the access to public services that other organizations would like to have. So the needs that came out of this exercise have been grouped into those categories, which correspond to the categories that Enrico mentioned earlier. And the next step is to utilize the tools and the knowledge that SONNETS provides, so a compendium of emerging technologies and trends, together with some other documents and reports that come from consulting firms, or like expert views and opinions, and try to map the different needs to technologies or innovations that are out there that could help solve the problem. So regarding inclusive well-being and health, she found out that technologies that are related to Internet of Things, or to wearables or big data, are quite realistic to have, and are quite, let's say, advanced, and could provide very nice solutions to existing problems that she has, like remote health monitoring, or telemedicine, or pattern recognition if you use big data in terms of healthcare. Regarding the other needs, like the improved access to information and public services, things like artificial intelligence and chatbots, or like blockchain, could also provide nice solutions to the problems that she has. While when it comes to the increase of resource productivity, digitalization is also a high trend that should be considered in order to turn manual procedures into electronic ones and move on. So after gathering all these potential solutions, what she's doing is that she's performing a SWOT analysis for each one of those. So just as an example, when you talk about Internet of Things, there are, of course, great privacy and security issues that one has to consider as a threat. When you talk about wearables, a weakness in implementation is the high cost of devices, because somebody has to buy the devices to give them out to patients. When we talk about big data and data analytics, one of the opportunities that you can have informed insights on health issues, or if you talk about blockchains, you can have a very high integrity on the transaction log. And actually, the list goes on and on. For each one of those technologies, such as SWOT analysis performed, noting down both the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats, in order for her to be able to give, let's say, to her superiors a complete image of what is going on and how each one of those technologies is regarded. So moving on and not staying just on the technology identification and technology assessment phase, what needs to be done in order to port these technologies and these trends into the public sector to generate innovation is that she has to assess the impact and the feasibility of those technologies in her own context. So what we are offering in SONNETS is a structured way to conduct an impact assessment analysis for each one of the technologies that you have identified in the previous. So, as you see in this slide, you have a structured table where you can assess the impact on a whole level regarding the extent of the application. So what you are studying, if what you study could have an impact on the local or regional or at the national level or whatever. So you assess the extent of the application, and what is more important is that you go into this vertical axis and you assess the impact of that technology in the different policy domains that are present in its country and in its organization. So if you talk, for example, about big data that we have here, you can see that in the social context and when it comes to prosperity and well-being, which is something quite relevant because we're talking about big data in healthcare, you see that you can have a positive influence, which could, however, be indirect. But if you talk about privacy and security, which is again under the social tab, you see that the impact is negative at the moment because of many problems that have to do with personal data, ethics safeguarding, and so on. So this impact assessment is something that is something that is not, let's say, generic. It's something that is bound to the context of its organization. And following this assessment, where you can find out whether this technology will have a positive or a negative impact as a whole. So this table actually is something that supports decision making. You go on and utilize another easy matrix that's offered by SONNETS, where you assess the feasibility of its technology regarding the existing infrastructure, the legal framework that is available at the moment, the IT literacy of the people that are going to utilize such solutions, and the political will. So in our case, we see that Maria's organization does have sufficient existing infrastructure, so servers and infrastructure are in place, and there is quite sufficient legal work regarding big data and its relation to privacy and personal data protection laws. However, there is low IT literacy amongst the employees of your organization. They do not have data analysts, and people working with data are not that many. While there is also an inadequate commitment from the side of the decision makers. So this table allows you also to assess the feasibility, so where you stand, and if from your point it's easy to implement such an action. And the combination of those two assessments allows us to create a so-called feasibility impact quadrant, where you can see that there is a red area where it is considered quite difficult to go on and adopt an action and implement it. There is a green area where it denotes a region where an organization is capable of implementing such an action quite easy, while there are also the yellow areas that indicate that innovation is possible, but you need to invest to make it happen. So based on the impact assessment, we can see that, for example, Maria's organization regarding big data and data analytics for solving health problems, stands right where this black sun is. So it is considered that both that it has a high impact, so you can see you're right here, but it's low on feasibility. However, it's close to the green area and you can move easily inside this area. So there is a small need of investments in training people, for example, in order to allow the successful implementation of such an action. So finally, and concluding, once you have identified all those things about its technology, what you should do is you should run a scenario building exercise. So you just go on and select some dimensions on how the future will look like, and through, let's say, collaboration, you can come up with the future conditions regarding society and your organization operation in it. And with this exercise, you can see that for which of the technologies and the trends that you have selected previously are to be found in probably scenario that you will design, and which are out of it. So in our case, the four technologies that or trends that you see here with yellow stickers are the ones that are, let's say, considered to be integral parts of the future scenario of Maria's organization, while artificial intelligence and blockchain is something that is not evidently present in such a scenario. So this gives you also another hint on the technologies where, on which you should focus in the beginning. So all of this then provides a list of technologies, an ordered list of technologies to be implemented. And the final step is just to run a validation activity, again, with both experts and public sector representatives, but also with citizens to also test the acceptance of those upcoming activities. And then you end up with the final list that you should implement. So the way you should implement it, or the, let's say, activities that you should undertake to make such a transition successful, are then described to the roadmap. So this is actually where the SONNETS identification framework stops. It's a tool combined with a methodology that helps you, once you identify your needs, to end up with feasible solutions that will have a great impact on your organization's operations, and provides then the input into the SONNETS roadmap, which will tell you how you should act as a policymaker or as a practitioner to realize the conditions and for implementing those actions. So I'm passing now the floor to Sonja, who will talk about the roadmap, which will be, I guess, also the concluding session of this webinar.
Okay, thank you, Sotiris.
Well, good morning. My name is Sonja Grigoleit. I work for the Fraunhofer Institute for Technological Trend Analysis in Euskirchen. Well, and I would also like to welcome you to our webinar. My intention is to tell you something about how SONNETS has developed its technology roadmaps and how you could use the content of these roadmaps for your work as a researcher and developer or as a representative of the public sector. Since the first technology roadmaps of Motorola in the 1970s, next slide, please.
You cannot see the slide. Oh, sorry. I think there is a problem with my now.
Thanks. But since the first technology roadmaps, many different types and applications of technology roadmaps have been developed. For example, the most common case is that they have been used for the planning of products. In this case, the different generations of manufactured products are tied to the necessary technologies for their development. Or for long-run planning. In this case, roadmaps are often used at a regional or national level where planning is projected long-term. And here we have also the roadmap of the European Industrial Research and Management Association, This roadmap integrates both commercial and technological knowledge so that the creation of the roadmap includes both market pull as well as technology push aspects. In SONNETS, our approach is quite similar. The development builds both on the identification of societal and public sector needs, the market pull part of our approach just presented to you by Enrico, and also on the analysis of emerging technologies, technology push part already presented by Sotiris. Within SONNETS, the roadmap development was done in 3 steps, which I will show you more detail now. Next slide, please. The first step is dedicated to the technology push side of our approach. It's a more detailed analysis of the emerging ICTs. So on the basis of the work just presented by Sotiris, we assessed all the different properties of the technologies to be able to better understand what we have to do with these technologies before we can successfully implement them in the public sector. Next slide, please.
It's just loading. It's okay.
The second step is related to the, let's say, market pull side of our approach. So in this step, we have a change of perspective. Here we start from the needs and see which of these identified emerging technologies are suitable to meet at least partially these needs. So for this step, we have assigned different emerging technologies to societal and public sector needs, like Sotiris already showed you in this example of Maria, and describe the gap between the state of the art of these technologies now and the implemented solution in the public sector. Next slide, please. So the third and last step is the development of the roadmap itself. Basically, what we have done in the step before is to create some sort of to-do list for the roadmap itself, including technological R&D, socioeconomic R&D, and the other necessary activities. So now in the third step, we have to take this to-do list and fill it with life. Next slide, please. Here you can see an overview of the content of the 23 technology roadmaps of SONNETS. It contains, for instance, a summary of all the existing solutions or services in and outside the public sector, current research works, and the actual technological challenges one has to deal with when aiming at implementing this technology in the public sector. Also necessary other activities are listed, like, for example, if the processes in the public sector have to be changed, or if a regulation or new or modified legislative framework has to be developed. Next slide, please. One example I would like to show you would be the roadmap for artificial intelligence and chatbots. Artificial intelligence is already in use in some public sector organizations. For example, here we have Amelia. Amelia was born, or better created, in London in 2016, and she's a robot, capable of making decisions and also tracking customer emotions. This robot is used by the Enfield London Borough Council to help, for example, directing residents to correct information or to authenticate licenses. Another virtual assistant is Alex, who started also in 2016 the Australian Tax Office to help citizens with questions related to taxes. Alex has already conducted more than 1 million conversations with citizens. And yet another virtual assistant is Emma. Emma works for the Department of Citizenships and Immigration Services in the United States. Emma speaks fluent English and Spanish and answers almost 500,000 questions per month at present. Next slide, please. Moving back to the SONNETS roadmap of artificial intelligence. On the basis of the SONNETS roadmaps in general and also on this roadmap of artificial intelligence, we have developed 2 types of recommendations. One for research or IT specialists in general, and on the other side for public sector representatives. All these one-page recommendations can be found on our homepage, as Esther will show you in a minute. Here's an example of a recommendation for researcher and developer. Each of these recommendations contains a technology or ICT trend, like here, artificial intelligence, and the societal need which these technology can satisfy. So here in this example, we address the need access to public sector information. Of course, artificial intelligence is also able to address other societal and public sector needs, but in our roadmaps, we concentrate on just one need to give an example how ICT can specifically address societal needs. Then, these one-page recommendations also contain a summary of the state of the art of the respective technology and if it is already in use in the public sector. On the left side, we have summarized the technical challenges, which might be interesting for you if you're an IT researcher and developer, and also perhaps for policymakers who might get ideas for future funding opportunities. On the right side, we have summarized the non-technical challenges, which might be interesting for you if you're a socioeconomic researcher, for example, regarding dealing with ethical or societal challenges. So moving back to the example of artificial intelligence. Next slide, please. In general, it can be observed that artificial intelligence is one of the top 10 emerging technologies in which a lot of research and development is happening right now. However, the state of the art of artificial intelligence already permits to have several applications like chatbots or virtual assistants, which I've shown you before, which could help to satisfy the need to assess public sector information. The current challenges on which several research organizations or companies are working currently are, for example, the advancement in natural language processing, for example, regarding the local language, or the natural communication between the artificial intelligence system on the one side and the human being on the other side. So, for example, many customers complain about something like cold user experience or that the artificial intelligence system simply cannot relate to human beings. Or the learn and reason of artificial intelligence systems when they encounter new tasks or situations, so to speak, to learn from past experiences. In the area of non-technological challenges, we could mention that we have to prepare regulation and possible new laws in the area of ethics, security, privacy, liability. So who is responsible for the errors of a virtual assistant? We should find answers to these questions. Or to promote the use of artificial intelligence in the respective public sector organization. Probably there will be many citizens who are reluctant or simply do not like to talk to a machine. And we have to decide on the chatbot infrastructure from a private company or one's own IT infrastructure, which will be a decision depending on the costs, but also on the necessary security framework. So on this next slide, you can see the recommendations for the public sector representatives. These recommendations can also be found on our homepage. On each one-page recommendation, you'll find the technology, so here artificial intelligence, and also the assigned societal need. We also describe actual solutions and services for the respective technology in the public sector on the left-hand side of the sheet, and on the right side you'll find the SWOT analysis of the technology, a summary of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats of using this technology in the public sector. We hope that this overview gives you a first impression if this technology might be useful for a specific public sector organization. And for more detailed information, we would like to refer you to our deliverables. As a second example of our SONNETS roadmaps, I would like to present you the roadmap of e-participation. Within Europe, there are already several e-participation platforms up and running, for example, Citizen Space. Citizen Space has been used, for example, by the Scottish Government to run online consultation, for example, regarding the consultation on Scotland's independence referendum. The Scottish Government asked its citizens, for example, about the content and the timing of the referendum. In this case, over 20,000 responses were submitted through Citizen Space. Or the European Citizens Initiative. This allows European Union citizens to participate directly in the development of EU policies. Namely, if 1 million EU citizens which live in at least one quarter of the member states agree on one initiative, they have the right to invite the Commission to submit a proposal for a legal act. Or Agora voting. Agora voting is a platform which can be used for online voting purposes. And Agora voting, for example, has been used by the Spanish political party Podemos. or Frankfurt fragt mich, which is a platform of the city of Frankfurt, which invites its citizens to participate in decision-making processes or forward their own ideas. And here this example is about public bathrooms in the city center of Frankfurt. For e-participation, we also have prepared a recommendation sheet for research and developer regarding the use of e-participation in the public sector. And the main technical challenge of e-participation lies in the area of user-friendliness to create systems which are easy to use, simple and attractive for the users. Other challenges which have been observed are, for example, personal resources. So if you set up an e-participation platform in your public sector organization, you need a user support or moderator to promote and to encourage the citizens and also to respond to aggressive, inappropriate or abusive behavior. You also have to think about a change of processes. If you collect all the different opinions of the citizens, you have to guarantee that these opinions later on will be taken into consideration. You also have to think about promotion. You have to encourage the citizens to take part in e-participatory activities. Another important challenge is to deal with the issue of the digital divide, that many citizens are not able or not willing to use online platforms due to a lack of digital skills or literacy or missing digital infrastructure. For e-participation, we have also prepared a one-page recommendation for public sector representatives. Apart from the overview of the actual application and services on the left side, it contains also the SWOT analysis of e-participation. For example, it mentions the strengths that e-participation could lead to enhanced transparency of political process and therefore also to an increased acceptance of political decisions. Or the weakness that the citizens need to be familiar with the internet access in general and specifically with the e-participation portals. And the opportunity that it might engage in particular young voters, and also the threat that in small-scale application it might be manipulated by organized groups or used for online propaganda. These roadmaps altogether are the specific findings of our project SONNETS. When developing these roadmaps, we have also identified some more general findings. The emerging ICTs presented by SONNETS are already on a sufficiently advanced technological level to be able to satisfy current societal and public sector needs. Of course, for example, in the area of artificial intelligence, there's still a lot to do. We are probably only at the beginning of the possible development in the area of artificial developments. But the state-of-the-art of these technologies still permits to use several services and applications of these technologies to help satisfying current societal and public sector needs. So we don't have to wait 5 more years and observe the development of artificial intelligence. We can start right now implementing these technologies at the current state-of-the-art. Thus, the bottleneck of innovating the public sector is not technological research and development. It is the implementation itself, the adaptation to the specific necessities of the public sector and the consideration of these complex process-oriented socioeconomic and ethical issues. We have seen that in many big cities on national or even at a European Union level, these emerging ICTs are already in use. For example, chatbots, e-participation portals, clouds, open data portals. However, in most municipalities or cities in Europe, these services are unknown or at least not in use due to the lack of personnel, of funding, initiatives, or simply because the citizens who do not demand these services. We hope that SONNETS can contribute to innovate the public sector by informing you about the different opportunities how to satisfy societal needs with ICTs, and also by informing you about necessary research and implementation activities we would recommend for funding or which in itself are interesting business opportunities. So next, Esther will tell you more about how to find information about SONNETS, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Sonia. Now let's go to Esther, who is going to introduce you the results and how you can find them in our website.
Okay, thank you, Nuria. We are running late, so I'll try to be very brief, because we also want to give you room for questions and discussion if you wish. My name is Esther Garrido from Atos, and I'm in charge of the development of the sustainability activities of the project. So, well, you are aware by now of the work the partners have done in this project and the knowledge we have produced related to public sector innovation. But this is not the end. Our aim has not only been to produce these tools and materials. Our aim is also to convey our research to an audience that can reap the value, that can promote its further use, and this way contribute to accelerate the transformation of the European public sector. So, to conclude this webinar, I would like you to help find the results that can be useful for you. So let me present you the SONNETS website. Can you hear it? Can you see it? Okay. Here in the results section, you can find the 3 pillars of the project, as has been explained before. On one side, the needs. Here, the methodological framework for assessing innovation in the public administration. And finally, the roadmaps and recommendations targeted to the specific stakeholders. This is individual, businesses, and public sector itself. So the most salient material related to the needs can be found here. Here, the needs representing per stakeholder the demand-driven approach we've taken, as explained by Enrico. Societal and public sector needs, for example, here, and what it's meant by each one, and some quotes from our informants. You can find also here the list of needs in another format that can be more convenient for you. As you can see, the document is preceded by an explanatory introduction, and you can download the document by clicking in the link here. Okay. The same goes for the framework. Here is a general approach of the work introduced by Sotiris, and then different documents extracted from the work carried out in the project. I invite you to have a look to all these documents or join our discussions in Futurium. This is the IC platform for experts and citizen participation. Okay. For the roadmap, we are redesigning this page to make it more stakeholders oriented. We are now in the process to upload all these documents that we have been mentioning. And but basically, the most relevant materials can be found here. And here for the roadmaps, you can see the roadmap presented by Sonja a while ago. We will also promote them, all these documents and materials, in the front page for a better access, as you can see here for the framework, here, or the recommendations for the needs, and here for the framework we have a video. I invite you to take a look. Here you can find the explanation of the framework in just a few minutes. But one important aspect that I would like to highlight is that these materials that they are released on Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license. This means you can freely use them, but you have to give appropriate credit to SONNETS, and if you build upon the material, you must distribute your contributions under the same license as the original. In any case, we are aware that the practical application of the methodology and conclusions you have seen, due to the research and validation work that lies behind and the extent of the documents, is not immediate. This needs to be explained and consequently guided. So the consortium is willing to help apply the framework and SONNETS results in general in the interested public sector organizations. We have a contact form here where you can get in touch with us. The consortium will happily attend your request, organize the collaboration within the SONNETS community, depending on the type of request, and we will come back to you with a proposal. So please don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Esther, and thank you to all my colleagues for the explanations. Now it's time for questions. Do you have any questions regarding the presentations that we have made in this webinar? Please go ahead. Because you are mute, if you have some questions, just unmute yourself. No questions?
Nuria, hello, this is Dimitri from Athens.
Hi.
I would like to ask you if the material you presented today is included in the site, or if you're gonna...
Yes, it will be the presentations and the recording will be uploaded to the website. I will keep you informed. I don't know if I have all the emails because there are people that who not register by the official site, but I will, if you follow us in the social network, we will announce the publication there.
Yes, it's very interesting material, and thank you.
It will be soon in this week.
Great, thanks.
Thanks. More questions, please? Okay, this is to be clear. Then I think that we don't want to spend more time. I would like to thank all of you for your time to be here in this webinar. Just let you know that all the results, as Esther has mentioned, can be used for you in your organizations, just respecting the license terms, but they are free, and then if you have any doubt, don't hesitate to contact us. We are willing to collaborate with you, and we wish that people use our results in their work. Then thank you everybody and have a nice day.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.